briefly want to, so if you, and the point of this in relationship to Confucianism is if you do accept reality as it is, if you accept all that is, if you can begin to engage in non-resistance, then there are definitely going to be periods of confusion. Because there is a lot going on. Not just that seems paradoxical in reality, because when the more that you study reality, the more that you find that it's not all clear. It's generally paradoxical. And things can be one thing and another at the same time that seem to be contradictory. That's what quantum physics, kind of has showed us. And if you look at things one way, you get one answer, and if you look at things another way, you get another answer. But you may not be able to reconcile those two things. So the nature of reality for our mind itself actually is somewhat paradoxical and confusing. I want to just, because there's limited time, I just want to throw out a few things. First, to compare confusion, to some other synonyms, like bewilderment. Right? Because at first I was saying, well, confusion is not the same as bewilderment, but then I thought, no, it actually is. And bewilderment is a good metaphor for it. Because what did Jesus do before he went to teach? Right? He went into the wilderness. And when you study different religions, you find that there's this wilderness period for a lot of the founders of religion. Buddha left, the world that was very well constructed and ordered and went out into the forest and went and exposed himself to all different paths of spiritual development, found them all wanting, and eventually ended up sitting beneath the Bodhi tree, confronted by Maya and tempted by Maya, right? In the same way that Jesus went into the wilderness. And the Bible says that he was tempted and tested in every way that is possible for a man to be tempted. That must have been a tremendously confusing ordeal, right? A lot of us get that over a period of time, But that when you leave the world that you were socialized into and go into the wilderness, that means the uncivilized world, then you have the opportunity for all your identity to break down. And then you go through like out of a state of false certainty where things are ordered. When that no longer is sufficient for your soul or for the divine spirit, then you will be moved into a place where your identity has to be broken down, where your ideas have to be broken down, where all the structures need to be broken down. Then you are in a state, you may be in a state, another synonym. Synonym? All of a sudden I wanted to say cinnamon. Give me some cinnamon. Of befuddlement, I do see kind of confusion as a process and bewilderment as a process, but befuddlement as a state within that process, right? Where you move from false certainty into a kind of breaking down of things, which is then confusing, and you may have a period of time there where you are in a state of befuddlement. Nothing makes sense, right? Because you're still clinging to the old ideas, right? But like Jesus said, the old wineskins need to be broken for new wine to be poured into it. Then you can go through the process of fusion if you persevere. If you still move, you're propelled by the divine spirit and by your soul, moved by the attraction towards truth and sustained by feelings of love, then you can experience clarification. You talked about that, right? And clarification, in my estimation, doesn't come from your own mind. Clarification comes from when your mind is active, looking at things, but the light or the inspiration comes from another dimension, from the divine dimension, what we call spirit, and puts things into places. So, like the Bible says in James, God freely gives wisdom to those that ask. If, like, more or less, it doesn't say, but if you need to know something, or if you're confused, then ask God, who freely gives wisdom to all, if they ask in humility. So the process of Confucianism, going out in the wilderness, you get humbled. You know, you meet people sometimes who every sentence they say, I know, right? I know. Or you say something to them, and they go, I know. Even before you finish the sentence. And even in talking about their own things, they go, I know, I know. Have you ever noticed that? And I noticed sometimes that I would do that. Those are the times when you really know the least, you know. Because when you go through periods of times where things don't work, it's obviously that you have blind spots that, you know, are suddenly becoming apparent, and you're going into the wilderness. You know. Then, you know, if you proceed in and look at things, accept what is, then a mind that is higher than yours, or something, helps to bring clarity, and you can see how things are, right? You know, people who go to the most profound states of this say that this is an ineffable experience, right? You can't explain it to people, because once you try to put it in words, then all of a sudden you're back into the dialectic. You put it in words and somebody will say, yes, but, you know. And that's okay, but you know, you can see it, and you also are operating then from a deeper level of being yourself, more in touch with being, in touch with the oneness. And so then you can see that there is a process that's going on, that spirit is working and unfolding. And this process works on every level. You know, so far I'm commenting mostly on the individual level. But if you take it to what's going on in the world, we have come to a point where, because of communications and because of transportation, that we are much more in, and travel, we're much more in contact. You know, we are a cosmopolitan, multicultural world. And in order for this world to fuse, to arrive at a state where we can have a global culture of peace, the world has to go through, and actually has been going through for some time, since the beginning of the Renaissance and the beginning of an exploration by the Europeans that began this process of bringing the world into contact with each other on a much more intimate level. And then it was really accelerated in the 20th century, and we're going through a process now where it's tremendously accelerated, because now it's not even that you have to travel places, but more people do now than ever have before. But it's where through electronic media you're connected with people all the time, and you find out that they are not the way that you read about them in books. They're not the way that you see it on television. If you have MySpace or YouTube friends, you know, and you're getting that information directly from them, you find out, hey, a lot of young people in Africa have a lot of similarities to me.